Hello, I'm Rebecca Meacham, advisor to Sheepshead Review at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. And in this segment, I'm going to talk about Sheepshead's enlarging communities. In some of the ways that Sheepshead reached out and formed different audiences and cultivated different connections. I'll talk a little bit about high school contributors, the interview section, or the interview feature rather, our connections with the Green Bay Packers, beer, and our launch parties. Starting around 2011 to 2012, a really great former editor and then later editor-in-chief, Nicole Rude, began thinking, how could we cultivate interest in Sheepshead Review from high schoolers? And so for this issue, Nicole created a unique section for high school contributors. This continued for, I think, 1 or 2 more semesters, but it was a really labor-intensive venture. Essentially, Nicole and whoever then took over as the editor of the high school section had to make sure that they were meeting Department of Public Instruction standards for disseminating calls for submissions to high school teachers, had to try to connect with high school teachers. And then in some cases, high school teachers would make submitting to Sheepshead Review part of their project and allow students to submit their entire creative writing portfolios from a quarter or a trimester or a semester. So the volume of submissions, the methods of submission, sometimes they'd be in paper, like literal paper, really became kind of overwhelming over the years. But it was an incredibly cool, we had 280 submissions just from high schoolers for this particular first iteration alone. It was really great. Like it was, you know, again, extraordinarily labor intensive for that editor. And I think that editor even had a staff assigned to high school subs uniquely. But it was an incredible showcase. It was a wonderful way of celebrating youth writing and to make a connection to a group that doesn't traditionally have a ton of outlets for publishing visual art, poetry, nonfiction, and fiction, or other types of things. After a while, we still wanted to continue the interest in high school contributions and submissions. And so that continues to this day. And we do actually have a remarkable number. For example, there's a high school in Seoul, South Korea, or maybe more than one, that routinely submits to Sheepshead Review and routinely has really good submissions. And so it's great to see. So while I wish maybe some more Wisconsin high schools, we'd reach out to them a little bit more, just get some more subs and get sort of an ability to cultivate that more strongly. And ideally we'll be doing so in the future. It's been amazing to see what we get from the other places in the United States and even internationally. So now what we do is we tend to denote a high school submission with something on the page itself, and it's integrated as part of the journal, either as part of a section, if we're still doing genre sections for that issue, or if we are doing, or throughout the issue, wherever it might appear, if we're not doing like genres to determine sections, if all of the genres are sort of intermixed. Another way that Sheepshead reached out from the very beginning and established a community and reached farther than just our own Green Bay community, which is great, and our own campus community, is through interviews with nationally renowned writers and artists. Benjamin Percy is someone we were lucky to get a hold of very early. I think this might have been 2006. Amy Bender is an incredible writer. Both of these writers are of national stature and are just amazing. And our very confident, bold students reached out and asked for interviews with and secured interviews with these particular authors. Up on the upper left side of your screen or in my slide is an interview with Sean Sheehy by our art director at the time, Nick Jenquin, our layout editor. Sean Sheehy is a pop-up book designer and a broadside designer. And so he works in the visual arts and he's incredible. This is a feature that we do very intermittently. We don't do it with regularity, and it's something that I always encourage students to do because it's an incredible use of your skills and it looks really good in your own portfolio. And more importantly, or at least equally importantly, it's an excellent thing to bring, way to bring our journal into greater circulation and show how we fit into a larger community of artists and writers and art makers. One of the other very neat collaborations that we did was a Packers mini zine. And that is this little teeny tiny issue. I'm holding it up if you can see me on your screen. It's itty bitty, it's pocket size, small as they say, to mark our UWGB's brand new partnership with the Packers. So at that time in 2015, the University of Wisconsin Green Bay started partnering with the Packers, and we thought, what better way to do this? What's interesting about this journal is actually it's one of 3 journals that we printed that year. We had a fall journal and a spring journal, and this became the winterim journal. So this was a real labor of who had the capacity to work basically for 30 days over holiday break. As you can see, all of the fiction, which is called jokingly fan fiction, appears. It's a very tiny journal. There's about 8 pages. It's beautifully done. And there's art, there's poetry, there is all genres are represented here, and they're all Packers themed. One incredibly interesting growth and professionalization experience came when these editors on this little mini journal that was sort of a one-off had to work with our marketing and our compliance, was it compliance? Or permissions, it's mainly marketing department and outreach department about what they were allowed to do in terms of designing the issue, rights to names, rights to images, rights to logos. It was very high level kinds of authorizations, and they were getting word from the Packers organization and learning about copyright and trademark and all of this great stuff. This is what we ended up with. I will also say, along the way of our Sheepshead journey around the 2018, one of our beloved former colleagues in the English department, Stephen Hall, always used to brew his own beer, and he offered to do a Sheepshead edition of beer. And I don't know why, but we landed on a Scotch ale or Scottish ale, and this was a limited edition. What would it be? Vintage? Anyway, so we had to label them with our own bottles, and I kind of like the way this looks like a beer commercial. Finally, in this segment, I'll talk about our launch parties. So every single issue has its own celebration at the end of the semester when the journal comes out. And you can see the journal is in hand in nearly all of the pictures I'm going to show you. Our launch parties began small scale, as you would think they would. Here you see pictures at our local coffee house, on campus, which I think is going to look different than it does in these pictures here. And you can see that people are reading their works. We've also began enlarging from just the coffee house and maybe certain conference rooms on the Green Bay campus to also on the Green Bay campus, the Lawton Gallery, which is a gorgeous gallery. And it was sort of staged like an art exhibit. Right outside the Lawton Gallery on the Green Bay campus on the first floor of Theater Hall, which is kind of the funky building where English and Sheepshead and everything else lives. You can see we had a lunch party here a few years ago. We've also used on the Green Bay campus the Weidner Center for Performing Arts, which is an exceptional venue. This is the lobby, and it is absolutely beautiful. And here we're holding the shiny issue that if you watched a different segment that you'll recognize. You can also see that merch, aside from beer, is popular over the years. Right now I'm wearing my Sheepshead Review shirt, one of them, and we're all clad in the Sheepshead Review shirts of that year as well. That's going to be it for this particular segment on all of the ways that we've celebrated enlarging connections to the community, and hang around for even more content coming up.